Jordan's teacher was the one who first observed a shift in the 10-year demeanor. Jordan's teacher was the one Jordan asked to wash his hands numerous times a day in class, something he had never done previously. He refused to eat or drink at the school a short time later. Statins who first observed a shift in the 10-year demeanor. Jordan's mother noticed an increase in hand washing at home, as well as unusual anxiousness about finishing his schoolwork before class. Jordan denied having obsessive thoughts or changing his conduct when questioned. Jordan's mother was concerned and took him to the doctor, who first found nothing wrong with him medically. Jordan, on the other hand, had twice the upper limit of normal levels of antibodies to Streptococcus bacteria, which made perfect sense given that he'd had a sore throat and a high fever 3 weeks prior. Jordan's symptoms improved dramatically once the doctor recommended an antibiotic. Jordan's strep infection had almost definitely caused him to develop abrupt onset obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. OCD, Tourette-like tics, anxiety, mood swings, and bedwetting are among the illnesses currently recognized by pediatricians as PANDAS, pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorders linked with streptococcal infections, and PANS, pediatric acute onset neuropsychiatric syndrome. An increasing number of infectious diseases are being linked to a rising circle of mental disorders in both children and adults. Inflammation, which is produced when the immune system goes into overdrive and attacks the brain, appears to be a common thread in many conditions. PANDAS patients, for example, have larger basal ganglia than normal controls, which is likely attributable to inflammation. The basal ganglia are thought to be involved in the onset of repeated behaviors and tics. Inflammation has also been linked to mental illnesses in adults, including depression, anxiety, autism, PTSD, and even schizophrenia. Proponents of the inflammation hypothesis of mental diseases argue that there may have been valid reasons for evolution to relate inflammation to depression, for example. Because infection was the leading cause of death in ancient times, when our forefathers became ill, they had to devote all of their efforts to combating the infection. People who are struck with disease are less likely to infect others or contract a second infection because they are sedentary and depressed. Getting depressed in response to inflammation, according to this theory, helped our ancestors survive, which is why it's still in our DNA today. The inflammation mental disorder story has yet another intriguing twist. Even the fear of infection, according to Dr. Miller of Emory University Medical School, can trigger an anticipatory inflammatory response that causes depression-like symptoms. Stressors were usually life or death dangers to our forefathers, not the everyday family, career, or money concerns that we have today. As a result, it used to be a good idea for the body to mobilize the immune system, including inflammation, ahead of time to prepare for an injury that would likely admit hazardous organisms into human tissue. This is akin to salivating before a meal to help with digestion. When confronted with a threat today, our brains implicitly believe that the threat will result in injury, triggering protective inflammation against germs, despite the fact that perceived threats in the modern world rarely result in physical injury. Chronic stress can also cause chronic inflammation, which can lead to depression. Other physiological drivers of inflammation, such as obesity, have been linked to an increased risk of mood disorders. So, bugs and inflammation can induce mental disease, either by directly producing inflammation or by psychologically creating inflammation as a result of an implicit existential threat. Why should we care? Chronic stress can also cause chronic inflammation, which can lead to depression. Antibiotics, in some circumstances, such as Jordan's, may actually alleviate symptoms of mental problems, opening up a whole new range of medical treatment options for psychiatric disorders. Antipsychotic medicines, such as haloperidol, also have antiprotozoa capabilities, reducing organisms like toxoplasmosis, which have been closely linked to schizophrenia. Azithromycin, a toxoplasmosis targeting medication, has also shown potential in treating schizophrenic symptoms. Chronic stress can also cause chronic inflammation, which can lead to depression. Furthermore, anti-inflammatory medicines, such as nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs, have shown some promise in the treatment of depression, while the evidence for their effectiveness in the treatment of mental illness is inconsistent. Chronic stress can also cause chronic inflammation, which can lead to depression. New treatments, such as immunoglobulin injections for pandas, are more hopeful since they aim to normalize the immune system by reducing autoimmune inflammation.
Finally, Jordan's obsessive hand-washing, which launched our story, has a rich irony. In some ways, Jordan was right to be concerned about germs and poisons getting on his hands. Colds, flu, parasites, such as toxoplasmosis, and hazardous bacteria frequently infect us by getting onto our hands and then spreading through our bodies via eye, nose, mouth, ears, and skin contact. So, in some circumstances, there is a very simple technique to avoid mental health issues: get rid of them using your hands.